the Academy holds a chilling legend. Neglect practice, become like Lewin Ardell. Lewin, the Academy's outcast, cursed with mana discharge disability. But you're the chosen one, Draka's harbinger of destruction. After enduring ridicule for 6 years, finally, a new opportunity arises. He also received a kinder surprise as a gift. But when he opened it, he was disappointed. Instead of a finger skateboard, it was a bear. It reminded me a lot of someone. Ted, is that you?
Come on, you little ass! F with me, huh? You fucking little asshole dickhead!
Ardell territory, in this small provincial estate in the middle of nowhere, a baby was born. After delivering the baby, the elderly midwife remarked that the patient had been blessed by the gods. A baby boy is born and he looks a lot like his father, the landlord. The mother gave her son the name Ruin. She hopes that this boy, Ruin Ardell, will be the light of this world in the future. Ever since he was a child, Ruin Ardell hasn't stood out for anything. But one day, while reading a book, the boy overheard a conversation between his father and Uncle Beggins. Hearing that the uncle was going to go get some good seafood, the child turned to him. Putting the book on the floor, Ruin asked the man not to go to the street by the southern mountain. The thing was, there had been a strange flow of mana there not long ago. With a puzzled look at the young gentleman's father, Beggins asked what this could mean. The next day, when it was late evening, rain clouds thickened in the sky and a thunderstorm began. When Lord Ardell opened the door of the mansion, he saw Beggins running in the pouring rain. Asking the man to hurry into the house, he said he was beginning to worry that he was late. Running inside, Beggins apologized, explaining that he had taken the longer route on his way back. He managed to avoid trouble by listening to the young master's advice. Scratching the back of his head, the mustachioed man added that because of Ruin's words yesterday, he didn't go through the street by the South Mountain. And now he learned that there had been an attack by a beast of men. Everyone who was there was in mortal danger. But thanks to the young master, Beggins was not among them. Looking at the door leading to Ruin's room, the mustachioed man asked if it was possible that this boy could be able to sense the mana hovering in the air. Sadly, Lord Ardell had remarked that it was hard to judge that for now. But if his son really can sense mana, he will be Ardell's future. From that day on, Ruin's talent for magic grew stronger and stronger. He could sense mana at the age of 6, and at 7 he was able to manifest it. And when the boy turned 10, he surpassed countless children from prestigious families to enter the Ignite Magic Academy, the best magic academy in the Radiant Kingdom. Ruin Ardell was the best among the applicants and was enrolled in the academy as the most outstanding applicant. What's more, this guy has been labeled a genius. This attitude somewhat weighed on the boy, but he comforted himself with the thought that his name would raise the status of the family. However, there is no way to say that he ultimately succeeded in this. On the first day of the start of class, the teacher asked Ruin to demonstrate the skills of the best among the enrollees. And that's when it became clear that this guy was far from the best, or even the second best. On the first test, something went wrong. Eventually, it turned out that the boy had a congenital mana release disorder. He simply lacked the ability to release magic even a meter away from his body. For a mage, Ruin Ardell's body was literally the worst. It didn't take long for the others to recognize the guy's ignorant background and lack of talent for magic. So, as expected, the other disciples' attitude towards Ruin quickly changed from admiration to contempt. The same day after failing the first test, the boy accidentally bumped into a bulky man walking by. Frightened, one of the students ran up to his friend and asked if he was okay. After all, he had just had the misfortune of touching a handicapped person. What if he became one? Shaking off his shoulder, the bulky man laughed and remarked that he should wash up soon. A man incapable of using magic. A defective person who is not even able to conjure in a magic academy. To the envious people, Ruin's current status was the highest pleasure they could get. So ever since then, they haven't neglected to punch that kid in the face. Whenever something like this happened, Ruin would go to the backyard of the academy and cry unnoticed by everyone. The boy didn't know what would happen to him. Would he even be able to become a magician? Ruin Ardell, the man who entered the academy with the best grades. More promising than anyone, more diligent than anyone. But because of that damn curse, the genius was handicapped by magic. The other students began to despise the guy, and the teacher simply wasn't taken seriously. And that's how the story of the once best entering Ignite Academy student ended. Or to be more accurate, Ruin himself thought that's how it ended. All because he couldn't even imagine what would happen to him next. There is one truth the lad didn't know at the time. In the depths of despair, there is always room for a miracle. Player artifact activated. The status window has been unlocked. The player artifact has been activated. Hearing those strange words, Ruin felt as if he was falling somewhere. Opening his eyes, the boy tried to realize where he was. He felt as if he were deep underwater. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of the guy's face, stating that he was the incarnation of Drak, the destroyer of worlds. While Ruin was trying to figure out what this nonsense was and who Drak was, an unknown creature in the mage's robes appeared in front of him. The first thing the guy thought was that he was dreaming the whole thing, but as he gazed, he realized it was too real for a dream. As Ruin looked closer at the unknown creature's lips, he noticed that it seemed to be trying to tell him something. At the same moment, the boy felt an inexplicable surge of strength. A few hours earlier, Ignite Academy's training ground. Next to pass the test of the combat magic professor, Heidel summoned Ruin Ardell. As explained earlier, the student only needs to create a fireball and hit a target with it. Fireball is a magic that any academy student should be able to handle with flying colors. But for someone who can't use magic, it's an almost impossible task. Will Ruin succeed this time? Without letting the boy think it over well, Professor Heidel told him to get started sooner rather than later. Starting to concentrate mana in his right hand, Ruin decided that he shouldn't give up after all. Maybe he would succeed this time. Trying to form a fireball in his hand, the boy was going to accomplish this task at all costs. And now, it seemed like he was getting the hang of it. The guy materialized a giant-sized fireball in his hand in a matter of seconds. Watching this, the classmates couldn't believe that Ruin had managed to create a ball of such a large size. Could a person really have such a large amount of mana? Without taking his eyes off his student either, Professor Heidel continued to stand silently looking at him. So far, everything was going according to plan. Ruin was confident that if he continued like this, he would definitely be able to launch the fireball at the target. But suddenly, the same thing happened as it had all the previous times the boy had tried to activate any spell. As much as the guy wanted to throw the fireball at the target, he just couldn't do it. His hand continued to burn, but the spell didn't come out. Ruin soon felt sick to his stomach and had to spit out his lunch on the grass. Wiping his lips, the boy explained to the teacher that there was nothing he could do about it. Then, trying to encourage his student, Professor Heidel told him to rather release the fireball at the target. However, no matter how much Ruin tried to do so, the spell simply wouldn't leave his hand. Realizing that the boy still wouldn't be able to pass this test, the professor reminded him that he was already in the graduating class. If Ruin was still unable to perform ordinary magic such as fireball, he would simply fail the final exam. Now the guy was finally convinced that he was destined to fail and would definitely not be able to graduate from the academy. Clenching his fist, Ruin apologized to his teacher and promised that he would practice more. In this practical shooting test, students must create 10 fireballs and hit the target multiple times. Ruin Ardell, in turn, is unable to load even one such ball into the target. With such successes, the boy can't even expect to be a third-rate mage. Classmates have long called this guy the Academy's main dumbass. No one understands why he's still a student here. Because the top enrollee was the scion of a nobleman from the provinces, peers from more prestigious families became jealous of Ruin and felt inferior. This was also the reason for the hostility. The boy can withstand the taunts of his classmates, but the reality that robs him of hope begins to destroy him from the inside out. The curse is the only thing holding him back for 6 years. And while Ruin had been holding up pretty well all this time, trying to fight off the mana release disorder, he was now involuntarily beginning to wonder how much longer he would be able to hold out. A few days later, the corridor of the academy. The freshman entrance exam just took place. Oh, who's that? Is it Ruin's dumbass? Suddenly came the mocking voice of one of his classmates. Laughing, Ben Folt remarked that it was time for this guy to pack his bags. It was a wonder he wasn't embarrassed to show his face here at all, being such a scumbag. Waving his hands, the golden-haired bully asked the boy if he knew what the juniors called him. Dumbass Ruin was his nickname among the freshmen. Because of Ruin, the graduating class is not a role model. So why don't you just go back to your province? Agreeing with his friend, the thug standing next to him said that usually, if a person was blessed by nature with skills, he was at least born into a rich family. But the trouble was that Ardell's name was only heard when Ruin entered the academy. Smirking, Ben Folt told his buddy that his father had said that the Ardell family were just assholes acting arrogant, even though they had nothing. So the bully immediately realized the low level of this lousy family. Ben Folt's monologue was interrupted by a fist that came out of nowhere and suddenly flew into his face. Abruptly turning around, Ruin ran up to the golden-haired bully and smashed his fist into his face with great force. Looking at his classmate with hatred, the boy asked what it was he had said about his father. Trying to stop the blood flowing from his shattered nose, Ben Foltz screamed how the bastard even dared to hit him. However, Ruin only explained to the bully about knowing when to stop. Who was he to say anything about Ruin's father and his family? Determined to stand up for his friend, the thug attacked the boy, asking if he realized who he was up against. But this big man's attack was quickly overwhelmed. Taking a step forward, Ruin dodged his opponent's blow and counterattacked him with a fist to the chest. In terrible pain, the classmate grasped his chest with his hands and fell to his knees right in front of the boy. Ruin only needed to land one blow to knock out the big guy. And while the lad stood looking at the defeated foe, Ben Folt's angry voice was heard. "Cheeky bastards, how dare you hit me!" The golden-haired bully shouted in anger, activating a huge ball of lightning above his head. Ruin hadn't expected such a turn of events. He never thought that his classmate would dare to use battle magic in the academy. Didn't he care that he might be expelled? As expected, Ben Folt wasn't just bluffing. He actually released a spell at Ruin with the intent to kill him. Looking at the ball of lightning flying into his face, the guy realized that he couldn't even move out of fear. Noticing what was happening, Professor Heidel ran to the boy's aid, shouting to the students to stop immediately. But it was too late. Ruin had taken the ball lightning strike with his chest. Trying to cover his face with his hand, the boy realized that his end had come. Not a single person is destined to survive a lightning ball strike. The very next second, the boy appeared before an unknown being in the robes of a mage, and the system reported that he was the incarnation of Drak, the destroyer of worlds. Status window unlocked, player artifact activated. Still not understanding what was even going on here, the guy heard the unknown creature trying to say something. That's when Ruin Ardell heard his name. Realizing that someone was calling him, the boy began to open his eyes. In front of him stood Helen, a high-class healer and infirmary worker at Ignite Academy. Remembering what had recently happened to him, the boy woke up almost immediately. After getting out of bed, he asked the nurse where he was now. Helen in turn told him that he was in the restroom and then asked the student not to get up. Taking his head, Ruin said he was fine and could sit down. But what happened? What was that creature? The vision seemed so real to the boy. Glancing at the healer, the boy wondered how long he had been lying there. Wincing that he'd been in the break room for almost a day now, Helen mused that he was very lucky nothing worse had happened. God had taken care of it. No other way. And when Ruin asked if he was all right now, the woman explained that there were a few more tests left to check, but the student looked pretty good for someone who had taken a direct hit from a balloon. The boy has no wounds, no burns, and even his organs are intact. The healer has never seen anything like this before. Looking at his hand, Ruin tried to understand how this was even possible. A ball of lightning is a terrifying magic that burns the body in seconds, and the guy took a direct hit and survived. So why is he perfectly fine? Professor Heidel, who had entered the common room, interrupted his students' musings. Guessing that the teacher wanted to talk to the student, Helen said that it was time for her to go on analyzing the results, then asked the boy to keep quiet if anything was bothering him. Left alone with his apprentice, Heidel asked how he was feeling. When he heard that the boy was fine, the professor told him that the professor's council was meeting about the incident. First of all, the man announced that Ben Folt would be expelled, using battle magic with the intent to kill, spreading false rumors about the head of the Ardell family, and treating and bullying Ruin unfairly. All of the above actions were taken into account in the verdict. After listening to the teacher, Ruin lowered his gaze and recalled that he had hit Ben too. And of course, this guy will be punished too. Given the circumstances, he'll be doing volunteer work for a month. In addition to everything previously said, Professor Heidel decided to ask his student something. Does he possess an artifact? A legendary weapon left behind by ancient mages with limitless mana? Ruin scratched his head, surprised at the question, and replied that of course he didn't have anything like that. If the boy had something similar, he wouldn't have been bullied like that. After thinking about it for a while, the professor said that, given the value and rarity of such an artifact, the head of the Ardell family would have used it for his own people rather than giving it to his son. Not understanding what the question was about, Ruin looked up and asked the teacher if he was even asking about it. In response, Professor Heidel stood for a while longer and looked thoughtfully at the boy. The teacher then explained that he was almost certain that before the student was struck by the lightning ball, a red light surrounded his body. It was as if a high-rank artifact had protected him, reflecting Ben's magic. However, as expected, Ruin had no idea what artifact he was even talking about. The only thing the guy could assume was that it had something to do with that weird dream. Deciding not to tell his teacher about his recent dream, Ruin explained that even though he didn't understand what had happened, he was sure he didn't possess any artifact. Seeing that this boy really didn't know anything about what had happened, the professor didn't question him further and advised him to get a good rest. I wonder what that man is thinking right now. Left to himself in the restroom, Ruin began to recall that indistinguishable dream from reality. That strange voice spoke of some artifact of Drak, destroyer of worlds. Also, besides that creature calling the guy a player, it seemed to be saying something else. Status window, muttered the boy, remembering the words of that unknown creature. At the same moment, as soon as the healer entered the room, a strange blue system window appeared in front of Ruin. Noticing the student's frightened face, Helen asked if he was all right. The boy, in turn, pointed his finger at the strange blue thing in front of him and asked the woman if she could see it. Looking worriedly at the boy, the nurse asked what he was talking about. There's nothing here. That's when Ruin realized that Helen really couldn't see that status window. That meant that only he could see this thing. Ruin Ardell, the incarnation of Drak, destroyer of worlds. As a result of his quest for limitless power, the mage Draka died with his world. Deprived from birth of the ability to release mana, Drak's source of power was physical strength. Drak's artifact invokes a status window and infinitely increases the wielder's power during quests. Realizing that if he continued to insist, he would probably be considered schizophrenic, Ruin decided to make an excuse first. He scratched his head and asked the nurse to ignore it, explaining that he was probably just imagining things. Helen laughed sarcastically, but it wasn't funny at all. Then, showing the student some papers, the woman told him that his tests were completely normal, so he could go back to the dormitory. Thanking the nurse, Ruin said he would. So, today, Ruin Ardell survived a lightning ball strike without consequence, met a man with a red eye in an alternate dimension, and got a status window. In that window, it was written that the boy was the incarnation of a certain Drak. Is it possible that the artifact of a mage named Draka was given to this particular guy? Arriving at the Academy's training ground in the evening, Ruin saw another strange window suddenly appear in front of him. The system suggested that the guy perform a repetitive body training task. Since Ruin has become a player associated with Draka, the destroyer of worlds, he needs to prepare his body for the increased power through training. The assignment was that the boy had to make 100 punches with his fist, 100 with his foot, and 100 with his leg from the turn. It's all about physical strength. What's more, even the reward for completing a task adds 10 strength points. As he prepared to try out the system, Ruin tried to figure out how all these skills could help a mage like him. Exhaling, the boy still decided to try it first. This was no time to hesitate anyway. As soon as the boy swung his arm, the task window showed that he had 99 fist strikes left to make. Immediately after the next blow, the figure changed again. Noticing that the number was growing, Ruin thought that at this rate, he would quickly reach his goal. However, after the next airstrike, for some reason the number didn't change. Thoughtfully looking at the task window, the guy guessed that a hit wouldn't count if there was even the slightest error in its execution. In that case, the boy made the decision to go through the training properly. Several hours later, still on the training ground, a very tired Ruin is trying to catch his breath from the long training session. He was finally finished. To be honest, the boy had no idea it would be so difficult. Be that as it may, he managed to fulfill all the terms of the assignment. Just as the guy was about to leave to go back to his dorm, the system notified him that he was rewarded with 10 strength points and a new unlocked skill. In that same instant, Ruin sensed something unusual. Looking down at his hand, the boy felt something faintly circulating in his blood. It was something even more fundamental than mana. Yes, that's right. Now Ruin feels that he has become truly stronger. Not wanting to stand idle for long, the guy immediately ran to test his new power. Taking a tentative swipe of his arm, the boy felt the air parting with immense power. The force entering the magic became much more powerful. The speed, the air resistance, the destructive power, everything feels completely different. Ruin's foundational strength had increased, and so after making sure of that, the guy wanted to check out the second reward. Lowering his hand, he called up the status window. The Power Circle passive skill replaces mana with physical strength. Mana circles will be replaced by force circles. From now on, all magic and all movements will be under the influence of the player's physical power. Of the above, Ruin was interested in the fact that mana circles would be replaced by power circles. That means his mom will be replaced by physical force. All those who feel and study mana have a circle around their heart. the mana circle plays an important role in releasing and amplifying mana. The number of these circles increases depending on the mana accumulated and the amount the magician can control. Ruin now has 4 circles of mana. That's more than is common for people his age. But because of the mana release disorder, it doesn't matter. Deciding to check his mana circle count again, the guy noticed something unusual. The mana circles had indeed disappeared. In that case, the insanely circulating force instead is power circles. Ruin knew nothing about mages without mana circles. He had never even heard of such people. If these new circles were not a full-fledged replacement, what would become of the boy in the future? In that case, he could forget about his life as a mage. After gathering his thoughts, Ruin realized that it was too early to give in to his decadent mood. It would be a good idea to put his new power to the test first. Extending his hand forward, the guy summoned a fireball. The spell appeared almost instantly. But how is that possible? Not only did the fireball appear literally in an instant, but its power was many times greater than what Ruin had before. Seeing the size of his fireball, the guy realized something. The power of the artifact was given to him as a unique chance.
Pet the cat.